Perfect. Perfect.
All right, everybody, what's going on? And welcome to today's edition of SWAC Talk. This is a show we cover the SWAC inside and out. I'm your tour guide around the SWAC, C. Wells, coming at you. And today is time to preview week 13. This is the final regular season and week of the season for the SWAC. We have two games this week. We also have a couple playoff games we want to talk about. We're going to talk about the North Carolina Central game, and we're going to talk about the Benedict game primarily because Coach Chennis Berry, his name has come up for some positions. It always comes up the last couple of years anytime a job comes open. So I wanted to kind of share a little bit about Benedict on this show, and also since we have a team in a team in the FCS playoffs from the HBCU realm, I wanted to go ahead and show that game a little bit of love too. So we have 4 games we're going to preview, and that's that, man. Then we'll be done the regular season. And next week is SWAC championship game, and then the Celebration Bowl. So football is coming to a close, and we here for it. Don't forget to hit the socials. Facebook is SWAC Talk, Instagram SWAC Talk, Twitter SWAC Talk 76. Also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. If you have, then thank you. We're over 1,140 subscribers, making our way up to 2K. At some point, we'll get there. We'll make it slowly and steadily. We'll get there. Also, don't forget to hit that like button, hit that join button if you'd like to become a member, or you get the super thanks to support the show in that way, or you can make a donation to the show by going to the Cash App, $SWAG Talk. Anything would be much appreciated. So let's go ahead and jump into this week's games. We're going to start off with the Turkey Day Classic. That game is played on Thursday, on Thanksgiving, November 23rd. 2 p.m. kick, ESPN Plus broadcast. This is the first time in a long time. Well, not in a long time. This is the first time in a minute that Tuskegee and Bama State hook up. I think they played a couple years ago in the Turkey Day Classic. Otherwise, last season they played Pine Bluff. But Tuskegee comes into this game at 7-3, 6-2 overall. This is obviously their last game of the season. Bama State's last game as well. Tuskegee is averaging 25.4 points per game. They're giving up 26.3 points per game. They average 141 yards on the ground per game rushing and 3.7 yards per carry. They give up 132 yards per game on the ground, 4.1 yards per carry. They are 137 of 243 passing for average of 191.5 yards per game. They have 10 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. Opponents 154 of 279, 13 touchdowns, 17 interceptions, 233 yards per game. The Golden Tigers average 332 yards of offense per game, 5.3 yards per play. The opponents 365 per game, 6.1 yards per play. They average 36.2 yards per punt. The opponents 35.8. The Golden Tigers convert 34% on third down and 58% on fourth down. The opponents convert 34% on third down and 35% on fourth down. They fumbled 20 times and lost 9, so they have 15 turnovers. The opponents have fumbled 9 times as well. They've lost 9 fumbles to go to 17 turnovers, giving them 17 interceptions, giving them 26 turnovers. So they're plus 11 in the turnover margin. They do a good job of forcing turnovers, and that's one thing that can always help you. They have 24 sacks as a defense, but they've given up 33. So that's a tough task for the O-line against that Bama State defense, who wants to definitely continue their strong play, but want to make up for giving up the 21 points last week against Prairie View. So I expect Bama State to get pressure early and often in this game because Tuskegee doesn't do a great job of protecting the quarterback. They are 25 or 34 in the red zone. The opponent's 25 or 35. Individually, um, they're led by Zena Moba rushing. He has 433 yards, uh, 5 yards per carry, and 5 touchdowns. Johnny Morris has 301 yards, rushing 4.9 yards per carry with 5 touchdowns. Bryson Williams is 55 or 85 passing for 4 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He has 695 yards. Also, Christopher Robertson, uh, 33 or 61, 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 462 yards. And also, Malik Davis has 24 of 42 passing, 365 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Also, a name, if you're a Bama State person, a name that you recognize is Ryan Nettles. He's 13 of 29 on the season, 198 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. Antonio Meeks is the leading receiver. He has 40 catches for 696 yards and 5 touchdowns, averages 17 yards per catch. Also, Corey Petty, 29 catches, 493 yards, 2 touchdowns. He also averages 17 yards per catch. They both have an explosive catch as far as a long play. Petty has a 71-yard reception, and Meeks has a 59-yard reception. The longest run on the season is 43 yards. So pretty standard. They're not like super explosive, but they're pretty standard. Defensively, they're led by Malik Moore. He has 75 tackles on the season. Also, Vincent Hill has 67. Moore also leads the team with 10 tackles for loss, and he also leads the team with 4 sacks. So that's a guy that you want to definitely keep tabs on. He's a linebacker, 6'1", 200, so not the biggest guy, but he's a guy who probably has pretty good speed to get in the backfield. So that's definitely a guy you want to keep an eye on. Number 3 is definitely the guy that you want to watch out for on his defense. Also, Javion Miller has 3.5 sacks and 6 tackles for loss, and Jeremy Dees has 3 sacks and 4.5 tackles for loss. So they have a few guys who can make some plays in the backfield. Michael King has 6 interceptions on the season, so definitely look out for him as a guy that would get after the ball when it's in the air. Also, Christian Ramsey has 3 interceptions also this season. Special teams, like I said, they average 36 yards per punt. They do have 1 punt block. They are 11 of 15 on field goals with a long of 45. They also have 1 field goal block, so they have had some leakage in their blocking, but they're pretty solid on field goals. Like I say, 73% with a long of 45. They're 2 or 3 from 40 to 45 yards, so that's a pretty solid kicker there that can definitely help you. Return game, Karan Taylor averages 10 yards per punt return with a long of 20. DeJuan McGee leads the team in kickoff returns with an average of 25.6 yards per return. He does have a touchdown. His long is 92, so he's definitely a guy who is capable of making a big play in the return game. But Bama State, like I said, Bama State comes in here. They're 6-4, 5-3 in conference. They average 18.6 points per game. They give up 15.6. They average 108 yards on the ground, 3.4 yards per carry. They give up 95 yards per game on the ground, 3 yards per carry. 189 yards passing for the Hornets, 163 or 250. They have 12 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. The opponents, 194 of 316, 10 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, 191 yards per game. Total offense, 298 yards per game for the Hornets, 5.2 yards per play. The opponents, 287 yards per game and 4.6 yards per play. Hornets average 36 yards per punt. Opponents 37. Bama State is 29% on third down and 36% on fourth down. Their struggle on offense is to move the ball. They can hit explosive plays, but they tend to not be able to consistently drive the ball. And anytime they really have a successful drive, a lot of times it's a short field because of defense. So they have to be better at converting on third and third downs to extend drives and not have to keep putting the defense on the field. Defense allows 30% on third down and 75% on fourth down. The Hornets have 5 fumbles to go with their 8 interceptions, giving them 13 turnovers. The opponents have 9 interceptions and 11 fumbles, giving them 20 takeaways. So they are +7 in the turnover margin. That's always a good thing. They have 24 sacks, and the O-line has only given up 13. So they've done a pretty good job of protecting the passer. And of course, the Hornets can get after the quarterback. They're 22 of 33 in the red zone. Opponents 18 of 24. Juwan Howell is the leading rusher. He has 349 yards, averages 3.9 yards per carry with 1 touchdown. Marcus Harris has 295 yards on 3.7 yards per carry average and 4 touchdowns. Demetrius Davis is still a second leading rusher on the third leading rusher on the team with 204 yards and 4.6 yards per carry with a longer 36. So they don't have a lot of big runs, at least when you look at each guy's long. They have a long on the season of 46. Howell has a 41 yarder. Davis has a 36 yarder, and Gates has a 24 yarder. So they're not really that explosive running the ball. And passing wise, they do have a couple really big pass plays. But Stewart is the leading passer. He's 118 of 184, passing 8 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 1,476 yards. Davis 42 of 61. 413 yards, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. And when they go to the air, Keyshawn Johnson is that guy. He has 61 catches, 829 yards, and 7 touchdowns. Isaiah Scott has 18 catches, 234 yards, and 1 touchdown. Tyrese Saunders, who had 2 touchdowns last week against Prairie View, has had, he had the bulk of his production in that game. 13 catches, 211 yards, like I said, 2 touchdowns. Howell, 12 catches, 139 yards, and no touchdowns. So since the last game, they've added 2 more guys to their double-digit receiving numbers. So Johnson is still getting the bulk of the targets, but other guys have been able to make some plays here and there. Bubba Adams leads the defense with 109 tackles. He also leads the defense with 15 tackles for loss. Traquan Thomas has 11.5. Thomas leads the defense with 6 sacks. Bubba has 4 interceptions. Mikey Victor, Amon Scarborough, and James Burgess each have 2. Special teams has kind of been up and down. They average 36 yards per punt, and they're 7 of 15 on field goals with a longer 34. Like I said, every week they don't really kick a lot of long. They don't really attempt a lot of long field goals. They're more comfortable kicking field goals really from the 20 to 29 yard range. They kick 7 field goals from that range. 30 to 39 yards, they've kicked 5, and then 3 from 40 to 49 yards. They have blocked 4 field goals as a team, so including returning for a touchdown. So they will get after the kick. They're very aggressive in that aspect. Robert McMahon has 12-yard punt average return with 1 touchdown, longer 48. Horn has a 19.8-yard average on kickoffs, and McMahon 19.3. So they do have some explosiveness in the return game. It's just really up to the offense. And this game, this is a game that should, Tuskegee's going to come in fired up. This is one of those games they kind of sell out for in terms of being ready to play. They're going to come in fired up. Bama State still has a chance to finish with 7 wins, so I expect them to be engaged in this game. I don't think they're going to be like they were last year against Pine Bluff. You want to really come out and play pretty hard. You want to go ahead and knock this team out the box. When Tuskegee played Alabama A&M this season, the Bulldogs really gave it to them, put 50+ on them. I don't see this score being that big because I don't know how, I don't see Bama State's offense just exploding like that. And, they played Miles earlier in the season and they didn't really put up that many points either. But I see them score. I think they're gonna get to the 30-point range, and I still think it's gonna be a combination of special teams, defense, and offensive scoring. So I like the Hornets to win this game 30 to 10. I think early is going to be tight because I think Tuskegee is going to come out early and try to prove something. But Bama State defense should be more than enough to get them through this game. That takes us to our Next game, which is not a SWAC game, but like I said, I wanted to cover these couple playoff games just just to show them some love. And this first game we're going to talk about is North Carolina Central going to Richmond to take on the Spiders of Richmond. And it's a 1 o'clock kick on ESPN Plus. So if you got opportunity to catch that game, make sure you kind of keep tabs on it. The Eagles continue to be one of the top teams in HBCU football. They dropped the big game to Howard, which cost them a chance to go back to the Celebration Bowl. But their resume was strong enough to get them into the playoffs, and they're 9-2 on the season, 4-1 overall. The numbers wise, this team kind of, especially offensively, kind of took a slight step back from last season, but not enough for it to be a big difference. Davis Richard did miss a game with an ankle injury, so the backup played pretty solid in that game against Valley. And this team is dangerous, and I think they have a great chance in this game because number one, Richmond has lost to Morgan and Hampton, so they're not unbeatable. And Hampton was Richmond's only conference loss. So I think that this team is going to be focused. Of course, you want, if you have opportunity to go to Celebration Bowl, that's your main goal. But, as a consolation, going to the playoffs and making a run is definitely a solid thing. So I think the Eagles will be, they'll be ready to play in this game. They average 36 points per game. They give up 26. They average 162 yards on the ground and 4.7 yards per carry. Defensively, they allow 175 per game, 5.3 yards per carry. They are 187 of 303 passing, 25 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions. The opponents, they average 214 yards per game. The opponents 159 of 290, 19 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. They average 187.8 yards per game. They average 376 yards per game total offense, 6.1 yards per play. Those numbers are, like I said, they're slightly down. Last season, they were over 400 yards per game. The opponents, 363 per game, 6.1 yards per play. They average 37 yards per punt. The opponents, 35. They convert 45% on third down, 81% on fourth down. So the majority of the times, if they have a conversion, they're going to get it. That shows that they're good at sustaining drives and they can, move the ball pretty consistently down the field. Opponents 35% third down and 52% fourth down. They've only turned the ball over 6 times as a team, 3 fumbles, 3 interceptions. So they're very, very good taking care of the football. The defense has 12 takeaways, 7 interceptions, 5 fumbles, making them a +6. I really like that low turnover number. That's going to bode well for a team in the playoffs, especially a team on the road. Being able to take care of the football always can go a long way. They have 26 sacks as a defense. They've only allowed 12. And with a mobile quarterback, that's a really good number because sometimes, quarterback can get caught trying to get out of the pocket, but they have a big quarterback. He's tough to bring down. And so, he's definitely a guy that's going to make plays for them. They're 39 of 42 in the red zone. Only 3 unsuccessful trips in the red zone. This is an efficient offense. Like I said, the numbers aren't as good as they were last season, but this is an offense that can really take care of business. Defensively, 26 of 33 in the red zone. They're led in rushing by Latrell Collier. He has 684 yards on the season, 4.7 yards per carry, 8 touchdowns. Of course, Davis Richard, 579 yards, 5.8 yards per carry, and 15 touchdowns. So he's a threat to score whether he's throwing or running. Jamari Taylor has 303 yards, averages 4.5 yards per carry, and 1 touchdown. Passing, Richard, 150 of 246, 20 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 1,915 yards, completed 60% of his passes. When he goes to the air, Devin Smith and Jaquan Haquin Davis, his top 2 guys. Smith has 34 catches for 504 yards, averages 14 yards per catch and 4 touchdowns. Davis, 33 catches, 404 yards, and 6 touchdowns. McCall and Taylor each have 16 catches. McCall, 278 yards. Taylor, 229 yards. Taylor has four touchdown reception. So he's a guy very versatile at the backfield. McCall has 1 touchdown. Also, Twan Flip has 2 touchdowns, and Chauncey Spikes has 3. Collier has 1, and Luke Bracey has 2. So they spread. The touchdowns are spread around. The receptions are spread around pretty well. The backs, they combined for 39 catches on the season, so they definitely are active in the passing game. They have 7 guys with double-digit receptions, 7 guys with over 100 yards receiving. So weapons all over the place. They, like I say, they still are a very dangerous team. Jaden Flaker leads the defense with 74 tackles. He also has 9 tackles for loss. Kendrick DeJour has 8 tackles for loss. Jaden Taylor has 6.5. Sacks, Flaker and DeJour each have 4.5. 4.5 sacks. Middleton has 3.5. Taylor has 3 interceptions. They're led by Jason Chambers with 3. Special teams, like I said, they average 37 yards per punt as a team. They do have 2 punts. They have had 2 punts blocked, and they blocked 1 themselves. Olivo is 10 or 12 on field goals with a long of 47. He's 3 or 4 from 40 plus. So definitely a really solid kicker there. They blocked 1 field goal on the season. So they blocked 2 kicks and have had 2 kicks blocked. Codrington, he averages 21 yards per punt return. He has 2 touchdowns on the season, including an 85-yarder. So that's definitely a weapon. He also averages 18 yards per kickoff return with a long of 31. So that's definitely a guy who's gonna be a playmaker in the return game, and he's definitely gonna be somebody that if you're Richmond, you're probably gonna want to kick away from. You don't want to have him give that offense better field position or have him break it because, like I said, he has 2 punt return touchdowns. So the Spiders would definitely want to be aware of where this guy is. Richmond, they're coming in, basically with a share of the CAA title. They finished tied with Villanova and Albany. Both teams are 7-1 in conference. So they're a team who they're pretty solid. They're 8-3. Like I said earlier, they have lost to Morgan and Hampton. So this is a team that can be beaten. 7-1, and they have lost a couple of those games at home. They average 27 points per game. They give up 21. They average 133 yards per game on the ground, 4 yards per carry. 115 for the opponents, 3.4 yards per carry, 200 yards through the air, 209 or 307 passing, 21 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. So they have had some trouble with turnovers, and that could bode really well for a central team who can force some turnovers. The opponents, 192 of 314, 15 touchdowns and 14 interceptions. So their defense does a good job of forcing turnovers themselves. Against an offense in Central who doesn't turn the ball over, that's a good matchup that I'm looking forward to. 333 yards of offense for the Spiders, 5.4 yards per play, 342 per game for the opponents, 5.5 yards per play. They average 41 yards per punt. They give up 40 yards per punt. They only convert 25% on third down. So this is a boom or bust team. For a team that's 8-3, to have that bad of a third down conversion rate, that's really telling for this offense. Like I said, they're more boom or bust than anything, and that's something that that could hurt them in this game. But the defense only allows 27% on third down and 46% on fourth down. They have 6 fumbles to go with those 13 interceptions, giving them 19 turnovers. The opponents have 9 fumbles to go with their 14 fumbles, giving them 23. Quarterback, they do a good job of rushing the passer, but they also give up 26 sacks. So they have had a tough time protecting the quarterback. And like I said, when you look at the numbers for this team doesn't look like a team that should be 7-1 in their in one of the toughest conferences in FCS, but they are, they've won the games they need to win. They're 34-38 in the red zone. The opponent's 29-36. This team is probably led more by their defense, although their defense does give up 227 yards through the air. This is just one of those kind of teams that has found ways to win games. And if you look at their schedule on the season, just kind of running through it. They lost to Morgan 17-10. They lost to Michigan State 45-14. They beat Delaware State 38-6. They beat Stony Brook 20-19. They lost to Hampton 31-14. They beat Maine 42-31. They beat Rhode Island 24-17. They beat A&T 33-10. They beat Campbell 44-13. Elon 38-24, and they closed out with William and Mary, beating them 27-26. So they've been kind of all over the place. They've had some blowouts. They've been blown out. Some games they score a lot of points, and some games they don't. They're not really a super consistent team, but they're on a 6-game winning streak. So they've done what you want to do to get in this position. Savon Smith is the leading rusher. He has 604 yards and 6 touchdowns for 4.8 yards per carry. Kyle Wickersham, 332 yards, 4 yards per carry, and 4 touchdowns. Milan Howard, 217 yards, 4.2 yards per carry, and 1 touchdown. Wickersham is the quarterback. He is 108 of 144. He has 2 interceptions, 7 touchdowns, 1,029 yards. Also, Camden Coleman, 85 of 130, 10 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. He has 975 yards on the season. Receiving, they're led by Nick DeGennaro. He has 54 catches, 702 yards, and 8 touchdowns. Jerry Garcia Jr., 20 catches, 2 touchdowns, 294 yards. And Javion Griffin, 13 catches, 198 yards. Landon Ellis, 16 catches. Quanvay Vinny also has 23 catches for 167 yards and 2 touchdowns. Brooks Haggerty, 11 catches, 141 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So they spread the ball out a lot. They have 9 guys with double-digit receptions. Savon Smith, the running back, has 33. So they definitely, they do spread the ball around through the air defensively. They're led by Tristan Wheeler. He has 104 tackles on the season. He also has 9 tackles for loss. Matai Fitz also has 9 tackles for loss. Marlon Lewis has 8.5, and Xander Barnett has 8.5. This team has 84 tackles for loss on the season. So defensively, they're definitely tough. They make a lot of plays in the backfield. Like I said, they also have 32 sacks. They are led by Barnett with 6.5 sacks. Interceptions, Jabril Hayes has 3 to lead the team, and they have 3 guys with 2 interceptions apiece as well. Special teams, like I said, they average 41 yards per punt, with a long of 76. So really solid punter. Aaron Trussler is his name. They blocked 1 punt. They have had a field goal block. They are 11 of 15 on field goals with a long of 40. Pretty consistently accurate from 20 to 39 yards, where they're 9 of 11 from that range. They're 1 or 2 from 40 to 49 yards, and 5 or 5 from basically 29 yards in. They are 0 for 1 from 50 plus. Return game, they're led by Savon Smith in the punt returns. He has 7.6 yards per return. Kickoff return, Howard averages 23 yards per return. He has a longer 37. So they haven't really broken anything in the return game, but they do have guys who appear to be capable. Like I said, looking at this from right here without really seeing both teams too much, I think obviously Richmond is playing at home, and that's a good thing for them. They are 4-2 at home, so they've lost games at home. The only 2 FCS losses came at home. The only conference loss came at home, and I think that bodes well for Central. This is a team who does turn the ball over a lot. and they struggle with protecting the quarterback. Central doesn't turn the ball over a lot. They are pretty solid in protecting the quarterback, and they have a dynamic guy at quarterback who's more than capable of making things happen. So I do like the Eagles in this game. I think they have a great opportunity to pull out the win here. The winner plays at Albany, so I think they have a good opportunity to advance. One of the interesting things in the CAA is Albany, Villanova, and Richmond finished 7-1. None of those teams played each other this year, so just looking at that, if Richmond got past Central, they would play a conference opponent for the first time this season. So that's something kind of interesting to look at. But I think the Eagles win this game. Like I said, I think it's going to be close. I say 31-28. I think they pull it out, but I think this will be an entertaining battle. Our next game, which is another playoff game. This one is a D2 game, and that's Lenore Ryan Bears taking on the Benedict Tigers. And really, the main reason why I'm putting this here is because, like I said, a lot of people are interested in what goes on with Benedict. This is also a 1 o'clock game. This is one of those games where Chez Berry is a coach whose name is all over the place when it comes to jobs. So I think that you want to kind of know what to expect from his teams, but they have a tough task in this game. The Bears average 40 points per game. They only give up 11. They average 207 yards on the ground, 5.2 yards per carry. Only giving up 80 yards per game on the ground and 2.6 yards per carry. They average 235 through the air, 34 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. This team has scored 63 touchdowns on the season, so they're very, very high scoring. They give up 152 yards per game passing, 13 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, 10 touchdowns. The opponents, 232 yards per game, 4 yards per play. The Bears, 443 yards per game, 6.6 yards per play. They average 36 yards per punt. The opponent's 38. They convert 38% on third down and 48% on fourth down. The opponent's 24% on third down and 23% on fourth down. So it's hard to move the ball on this defense, and it's hard to sustain drives. They've only lost 2 fumbles, 6 interceptions, 8 turnovers. The opponent's 13 interceptions, and they've lost 9 fumbles, giving them 22 turnovers, making them a plus 14. Very, very good margin. They have 35 sacks and only have allowed 12. They do a good job of protecting the quarterback, and they really do a good job of getting after the quarterback. They're 45 of 52 in the red zone, 11 of 16 for the opponents. Dwayne McGee has 1,213 yards rushing, 6.8 yards per carry, and 9 touchdowns. Xavion Turner Knox has 503 yards and 6 touchdowns. He averages 6.3 yards per carry. Zaire Dillard, 476 yards, 4.5 yards per carry, 3 touchdowns. So they have a 3-headed monster in the run game, and all of those guys are very capable of breaking plays. They're led by Jalen Ferguson in the passing game. He's 111 of 154, 16 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 1,468 yards. Sean White, 101 of 156, 16 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 1,324 yards. The Ari Rogers, 43 catches, 621 yards, 6 touchdowns. Songa Yates, 35 catches, 516 yards, and 7 touchdowns. And DeAndre Lester, 33 catches, 471 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Also, Keelan Parsons, 21 catches, 286 yards, and 4 touchdowns. And Malachi Sumner, 18 catches, 270 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So they spread the ball around pretty well. They have 7 guys who have double-digit catches, so they definitely spread the ball around. And like I said, they have a 3-headed monster in the run game, so they love to use a lot of guys. John Ross May leads the defense with 86 tackles. He also has 14.5 tackles for loss. Andre Jefferson leads the defense with 17.5 tackles for loss. Jefferson also has 10 sacks, so that's a guy you really want to look out for. They have 105 tackles for loss as a defense. This is a very aggressive defense. They definitely make it a point to get after the quarterback. Jefferson is 6'2", 295. He's a guy who is definitely a playmaker on their defense. They led in interceptions by Devin Hibbett with 2, and TJ Blanding also has 2. Special teams, they they average 36 yards per punt, and they are 10 of 14 on field goals with a long of 41. They have blocked 3. They have blocked 3 field goals and blocked 2 punts. So they blocked 5 kicks on the season, and they have had 1 punt block. Diari Rogers averages 13 yards per return on punts with 3 touchdowns. 77 yards is long. Definitely a guy you definitely don't want to kick to. He's gonna hurt you if he gets the ball in his hands. Yates averages 25 yards per kickoff return with a long of 48. Rogers averages 25 yards per return with a long of 55. Again, more than capable of breaking it in the return game. And this is like I said, this is a very dangerous team. They are playing Benedict, who is 11-0 on the season, and they're 8-0 in conference. They average 41 points per game, and they only give up 8. They average 165 yards per game on the ground. They only give up 86. They average 4.6 yards per carry. They give up 2.5 yards per carry. They are 215 to 343 passing, 22 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 258 yards per game. The opponents, 270 attempts, 118 completions, 121 yards per game, 7 touchdowns, 16 interceptions. Opponents only average 207 yards of offense. So this is a very, very interesting offense versus defensive matchup. Both defenses don't really give up a lot, and both offenses are very explosive. So this is a very, we'll see who wins these battles. 3.5 yards per play for the opponents, 423 yards per game for the Tigers, 6.3 yards per play. They average 32 yards per punt, and they give up 33 yards per punt. They are 54% on third down and 30% on fourth down. Opponents 26% on third down and 22% on fourth down. Again, 2 defenses who don't allow much in terms of sustained drives. They have 8 interceptions and 7 fumbles, giving them 15 turnovers. The opponents have lost 13 fumbles, and they have 16 interceptions, so that's 29 turnovers. 29 takeaways and 15 turnovers, giving them a plus 14 in the turnover margin. I had to do the math real quick. They have 45 sacks. They're really, really good at getting to the quarterback. They only have allowed 10, 52 of 55 in the red zone, 11 of 23. They are led by DeAndre Duhart. He has 591 yards on the ground, 7 touchdowns, averages 4.8 yards per carry. Noah Zaire Scotland, 295 yards on the ground, 13 touchdowns. He averages 3.9 yards per carry. Also, Jaden Taylor, 237 yards on the ground, 5 touchdowns, 4.4 yards per carry. They're led by Aeneas Dennis. He has 203 or 321 passing, 2,227 yards, 19 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. When they go to the air, Caden High is their leading receiver. He has 41 catches for 679 yards and 8 touchdowns. Jalen Jones, 42 catches, 557 yards and 3 touchdowns. Nicholas Sewell, 21 catches, 336 yards and 1 touchdown. Billy Pierre has 7 catches for 209 yards, averages 29 yards per catch with a long of 77. He has 3 touchdowns, so he's a guy who can make some big plays in his limited targets. Defensively, Derek Starks leads the defense with 65 tackles. Jaden Broughton has 22 tackles for loss to lead the defense. Lubert Danilius has 18 tackles for loss. Aaron Miller has 13 and a half. Joshua Barker has 12. So this is a defense that has 186 tackles for loss. That's a defense who makes a ton of plays in the backfield. They don't allow a lot in the backfield. Although I think that's kind of they have some guys listed twice, so that number is less than what it should be. Um, Danilis has 10 sacks on the season. Broughton has 9.5. Miller has 8.5. Barker has 7. Like I said, again, they do a good job of making plays in the backfield. And Melidor has 4 interceptions, and Kilpatrick has 3. Special teams, they average 31 yards per punt. They have had 1 punt blocked and 2 field goals blocked, so they've had 3 kicks blocked on the season. They Tom Picarillo is 14 of 18 on field goals. They have a long of 44 on the season. They have blocked. They have had two kicks blocked, and they have blocked 3 punts. Jordan Black averages 8 yards per punt return to lead the team, and Ashan Durant leads the team with 37 yards on 5 kick returns with 1 touchdown of 93 yards. Like I said, this is a very very interesting game because you have two teams who basically dominate their opponents. Neither one of them give up a lot defensively. They both are explosive on offense. They both can pass the ball. They both can run the ball. Um, whoever basically takes advantage of any mistakes the other team make is going to win this game. Now, last season, Benedict had a strong season, finished undefeated, and I think they lost to Wingate in their first playoff game. That kind of left a taste in some people's mouths. Can they avoid that this season? It's going to be tough. This is a team who, in Lenore Ryan, who has blown out everybody they played. Because I think I think they're due. I think Benedict's due. They're gonna have to play. They're gonna have to play the best game that they can play to get past this team. But I think they win this game in a close one. I think it's gonna be close. I say 30-29. I think it's gonna be a game where both offenses kind of have success. Maybe a couple of turnovers cost the loser this game. But mainly I talked about this game just so people be aware of what Chinnis Berry is doing at Benedict, because that's a name again that's come up a lot in coaching circles. So definitely want to keep an eye on that team if they make a run through the playoffs. And our game of the week is the last game basically of anybody's regular season, and that's the Bayou Classic in New Orleans, Southern and Grambling. Both teams are 5-5, 4-3 in conference. 1 o'clock kickoff on NBC. So not a lot of stakes in this game, but the winner has a winning record at the end of the season. The winner finishes basically 3rd in the SWAC. So there's, in the bragging race, but not a lot other than that. And Southern's coming in with an interim coach. This is Southern's 4th coach in the last 4 Bayou Classics. That's just impossibly unstable. That makes for some interesting things. Coach Graves, who was the interim coach, he coached for Grambling in an interim basis in 2021. Southern will be led by acting coach Sean Wallace, so they basically have a 2-coach thing going on. In case you don't know what that means, Wallace is going to kind of be the guy, leading the charge on game day, but Graves is the guy who is in charge of the day-to-day operations. And mainly, Coach Wallace is being put in this position because he's battling stage 4 cancer. So it's a good gesture for him to be able to do this in his hometown of New Orleans, for a team that he put in a lot of hard work as a player at Southern. So that's something to keep to recognize. But this season for Southern has been the definition of inconsistency. Offense 22 points per game, defense 20. Offense averages 114 yards per game on the ground, 3.5 yards per carry. The opponents average 119 per game, rushing 3.1 yards per carry. That number has grown over the last couple of weeks as this defense has kind of started to give way because the offense hasn't really helped them out a lot. 214 yards passing per game, 13 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, 197 yards passing for the opponents, 13 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Southern averages 328 yards per game, 5.4 yards per play. The opponent's 317 yards per game, 4.6 yards per play. Jaguars average 43 yards per punt. They give up 39 yards per punt. Southern is 31% on third down and 44% on fourth down. Again, sustained drives has been their Achilles heel all season, whether it's not converting on third downs or turning the ball over. They've hurt themselves so much. Defensively, they allow 37% on third down and 41% on fourth down. They've done a good job of getting the ball back for the offense, but the offense just hasn't been able to do much with it. 12 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, 10 fumbles, 22 turnovers. Opponents 13 fumbles and 6 interceptions, giving them 19 takeaways, so they're -3 in the turnover margin. Defense has 24 sacks. Offense has allowed 35 sacks, and that's a combination of offensive line struggling and quarterback taking sacks unnecessarily. They're 20 or 26 in the red zone. The opponent's 21 or 29. Individually, Kendrick Grimes leads the offense with 557 yards and 7 touchdowns. He averages 5.4 yards per carry. Gary Qualls, 389 yards on the season, 4.2 yards per carry, and 3 touchdowns. Harold Blood, 148 of 257 passing, 1,963 yards, 13 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. Chandler Whitfield, 16 catches, 279 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Pete, 15 catches, 263 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Cassius Allen, 13 catches for 220 yards. Darren Morris has 7 catches for 202 yards, averages 28 yards per catch. Also, Jalen Howard with 16 receptions. Kendrick Grimes leads the team in receptions with 27. This team has spread the ball around. They have quite a few guys with double-digit catches. When you look at these guys, they have 9 guys with double-digit catches. That's not bad for offense that is not that consistent. They do spread the ball around a lot. Derek Williams leads the defense with 61 tackles. Jalen Campbell has 58 and Jordan Carter 55. Kelby Givens has 16 and a half tackles for loss. Taj Brown 13 and a half. Both those guys have 6 sacks to lead the defense. Jordan Carter has 3 interceptions to lead the defense. Special teams, especially in the kicking game, is where Southern is probably at their best. Robins Beauplan, Mr. Goldenfoot, averages 43 yards per punt with a long of 56. They have blocked 1 punt and they blocked 1 field goal. They have had 1 field goal blocked. Joshua Griffin is 7 of 11 on field goals with a long of 54. He's 4 of 5 from 40 plus. So he's a guy with a strong leg. Ironically, he's not as accurate the closer that he gets, but longer kicks he's been pretty solid. Definitely a guy who can knock through those kicks. The return game has been an up and down affair. Whitfield averages 15 yards per return. They do have a return touchdown off of a block punt, but they haven't really broken too many punt returns. CJ Russell averages 19 and a half yards per kickoff return. Jalen Howard averages 23 with 1 touchdown, which was 90 yards. Grambling, this game, I think this game is Grambling's advantage because we don't really know what Southern's going to be. Southern has a lot of turmoil and turnover right now. Out of the 2 teams, Grambling has the most consistency and the most stability. So I think this is their game to win or lose. We kind of know what to expect from Grambling. We don't really know what to expect from Southern. Grambling averages 29 points per game. They give up 28, 155 yards on the ground, 4.7 yards per carry. 184 yards on the ground for the opponents, 4.6 yards per carry. 215 yards passing per game for the Tigers, 16 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Opponents, 18 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, 176 yards per game. 371 yards total offense for the Tigers, 5.8 yards per play. 360 yards per game, 5.5 yards per play for the opponents. Tigers average 40 yards per punt. The opponents 39. Grambling 36% on third down, 54% on fourth down, 38% for the opponents on third down, 55% on fourth down. The Tigers have 7 fumbles and 6 interceptions. 7 fumbles, 7 interceptions. 14 turnovers. The opponent's 13 interceptions and 6 fumbles, giving them 19 takeaways. They're a +5 in turnover margin. 21 sacks for the defense. Only 10 allowed for the O-line. Last season, this O-line was really young. They've gotten a lot more experience, and they've done a good job of protecting the quarterback. Also, having a guy who is a bit more decisive in the pocket has helped this offensive line as well. At 34-40 in the red zone, opponents 28-31. They have a two-headed monster in the run game. Chance Williams, 791 yards, averaging 6.1 yards per carry with 6 touchdowns. Floyd Chalk, who had a big game in the Bayou Classic last season, he has 524 yards rushing and 8 touchdowns, averaging 5.2 yards per carry. So those two guys combined for over 1,300 yards and 14 touchdowns. They're big play guys, and they're both young, so they still have some time to get even better. Miles Crawley, 178 of 298 passing, 2,120 yards, 16 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Antonio Jones, 38 catches, 546 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Lyndon Rash, 35 catches, 383 yards, and 7 touchdowns. Javon Robinson, 25 catches, 324 yards, and 2 touchdowns. This is another team who spreads the ball around. They have 7 guys with double-digit catches, so they definitely also can spread the ball around. Lewis Matthews leads the defense with 96 tackles. Sunday Anderson has 11 tackles for loss and 4.5 sacks to lead the defense. Keyshawn Johnson also has 4 sacks. Javon Carter has 8.5 tackles for loss. Interceptions. Trent Henry has 3. Matthews has 2. And Cedric Anderson has 2. Special teams in the kick game has been really, really good. Jimmy Isles averages 40 yards per punt with a long of 65. Tanner Rinker is 7 of 12 on field goals with a long of 38. They have not attempted a field goal longer than 38 yards. So they don't, they're a team who doesn't, they don't try a lot of long field goals. If they're in that range, they tend to go for it. They have 11 fourth down attempts on the season. In the return game, they're led by Joshua Johnson with 23-yard average on 4 punt returns with a long of 47. Javon Robinson has 7 returns for a 7.5-yard average. Joshua Johnson also leads the team with 24 yards per kick return with a long of 77. Again, this game kind of comes down to Grambling because we don't really know what Southern is gonna do. Southern is a team who is kind of all over the place. They fired the coach. You don't really know where the team head is at. They have a 2-coach system kind of going on. We don't really know how that's gonna work out. Grambling's offense and Southern's defense is probably the best matchup. So again, like most games, the difference is probably going to be if Southern's offense could put together anything consistent, because they're going to have to score points in this game, because even though Southern's defense is good, they do give up big plays. And if you give up big plays to this Grambling offense, Grambling's going to score points. I'm a Southern fan through and through, and I bleed blue and gold, but I'm picking Grambling to win this game by a score 27-20. Just too much uncertainty for me. Now I'm gonna be in the dome rooting for my Jags. That's gonna do it for today's show. I thank y'all for tuning in. Week 13 recap will be coming at you on Sunday, and women's basketball preview will be dropping on Friday. Y'all make sure y'all check all that out, and we're gonna catch y'all on the rebound. Peace.